right. Like we've talked about with the holiday fast approaching, it's more important than ever to make sure that your app can handle all that is going to be coming at it. With that we're going to talk about some essential tips and strategies to reinforce your app stability and keep everything running smoothly. This isn't necessarily a webinar. So we're just talking through some things. These might be some things that people will be like, no duh, but hopefully it's maybe a reminder of, oh yeah, that's the time to start doing that right now. But with all that, we have us a special secret guest. Guillaume has joined the chat, as my kids would say, and he's been developing for over 25 years in various capacities. But he's also worked for different e-commerce companies and applications, and has experienced several Fridays. I like to say some people have experience and some people have scars. I think from talking to Guillaume, Guillaume has a few scars from that. And
well, first, Greg, thank you for reminding me about the 25 years. Always appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, you started developing when you were 5, right? That's how that worked, right?
13, but yeah, that was a long time ago.
Perfect. So I'm going to transition you, sir. What would your first tip be?
Well, actually, that's a really cool segue from Locust. And Locust is a great solution. And Thomas, you were talking about actually doing that from your laptop and stuff. But if you're actually stress testing and performance testing any website or anything, you need a lot of resources to actually generate those fake users and traffic, because most of the big e-commerce websites want to handle like 10,000 transactions or users nearly at the same time. So leveraging software and solution like Locust Cloud could actually be helpful, because you don't want to set up like dozens of AWS instances to send traffic to that site. But I think it will come to preparation. So just to give you a bit of background, I used to work for e-commerce agencies back in the days, and we were managing like 30, 40 different big e-commerce retailer projects in Europe. So mostly fashion, and basically all the things that really sells on Black Friday. So the goal was to always have like that preparation, like a few months back, trying to stress test everything, do some performance testing. And every time you get the same problems, like defining what are the real testing scenarios. You want to do scenarios that map what your users are doing, but actually users can do so many things on your site. They can do like just catalog browsing for hours. They can add like 100 product to their cart and then remove that, use that as a wish list. So defining those scenarios actually takes a lot of time. And we were working really hard with our clients and some analytics to try to understand that, but it's never easy. And then obviously when the days come in, the actual Black Friday and then Cyber Monday, well, it's just super stressful. Whether that's for the marketing teams, the technical teams, the agencies, everyone's under pressure. Everyone is working like 24/7 for the next 2 days. And fortunately, over the past 20 years, well, a lot of changes in our industry made that easier. Like the fact that you rely now on cloud instances instead of bare metal servers. You don't have to actually drive to the data centers and plug some Dell server somewhere. You can just provision some new instances. However, with what we've seen, for example, with COVID, when COVID happened, e-commerce just got crazy. And obviously the first Black Friday in 2020 and 2021 were just kind of insane for e-commerce. So we've seen a number of transactions we've never seen before, just because people were locked up and couldn't actually go to Best Buy or Walmart to get their stuff. So they were ordering online. And at the same time, we've seen a lot of issues with some cloud providers just not being able to actually provision new instances. Oh, nice cat, Thomas.
We have a mascot now. It's official.
Yeah.
She has to be there. Yes. Too needy to not to
well,
be.
it's a black cat for Black Friday, so everything's
There we
really
go.
good.
It all fits in it. Black Friday.
So some providers had issue, especially with some like silicon shortage a few years back, actually provisioning new instances. And right now, as you said, so I work for a cloud application platform at Sun, and we've seen a lot of e-commerce actually like scaling their resources 5-6 times for Black Friday. We have a client that reached, I think, like 1,200 CPUs just for the day, dealing insane number of orders. And that's always a challenge, because like those applications sometimes are not really meant to scale that high. You see a lot of different bottlenecks. sometimes on components you don't expect. Like, for example, your cache on Redis, well, you discover that it's single-threaded, and then that it actually won't scale to that level of CPU and traffic. So it's always a lot of pressure and trying to react as much as we can.
Guillaume, question with that. You mentioned it. Would you recommend, like, before Black Friday, running through like a major scale up, like trying to like double or quadruple your infrastructure even in advance, or?
Yeah, I think so. Every time you go for Black Friday, and especially if that's a new application or something you haven't really battle tested before, you need to take a few months to actually, slow down on the new development and new feature. Not exactly doing a code freeze, because you still need to actually deploy stuff and release new stuff. But take your time to actually put a real testing process. So there are a lot of tooling. We were talking about, obviously, load performance testing with Locust and other tools like this. But you need to get some insight on your code. So you need an application performance monitoring tool, Blackfire, Neuralink, and all those ones. But as a development team, you need to get deeper into it. You really need to profile what could go wrong in your application. So you quickly realize that some part of your code will actually put some strain on other services, APIs, or I don't know what could be even the file system. So you need to perfectly understand how your application is behaving and all the potential issues that could arise. And then develop a plan over the next 2 months to actually try to, fix or at least optimize all the things that could have a lot of impact when you're going to need to scale. That's the first part, and that's the most important one. And yes, then testing it. So performance testing, trying to scale up with your provider to add a lot of resource, try to test everything.
I was gonna say that might be a segue, like, because I know, Thomas, you have some tips or ideas around testing and checking in on that too. So, what would you recommend? Like, some of the best practices might be for. So it's like, hey, we know we're going to be doing a test. What's the things to look at? What's the things to consider when we're doing this? How would you go about doing that?
It's something I learned, but you talked about scars and learning. I had also my own story when I was working for a ticketing company. Like, it's brand new, fresh one, trying to tackle this gigantic one that keep hitting the news for the wrong reasons. And we landed.
We won't say names, but we all know who
No.
you're talking about, and we're all hoping for the underdog to come in and take them out at some point.
Yeah.
They're not hosted.
So we secure a deal with a new large venue. Everybody was super happy. Came the day where the new season has been announced, and everybody was taking the frequent buyers were buying tickets, lot of tickets at the same time. Big rush on the website, online. Everybody happy eating the same API, and everything collapsed. So my learning from there that you need a plan. Fully agree with Guillaume. Like a few months back, you need to start testing, and you need to be able to create the same conditions. So create a clone of your production application, same setup, same version of everything, same level of resources you may currently have or think you need when the big day is happening, and start DDoSing yourself with load testing. And while you are doing this, use observability tools, monitoring, continuous profiling, this kind of stuff, and try to see what start to struggle, what's being collapsing. Maybe you will identify that you have some flaky parts of your application, some part of your application that turns flaky under those precise situation, and not on the everyday day-to-day basis when you have a lower traffic or something you may be testing with your own CD database with a couple of hundred entries that has nothing to do with your production database that have way too many complex data. And when you are querying this, like, you are telling way different stories.
Yeah. I think what's interesting in this too, I'm hearing from both sides as I'm in the Brady Bunch situation going on here. I think the piece that I'm hearing in this too that you guys have as an underlining in all of this is a lot of the tech checking the testing, the tech testing, all that, but running the test also tests the people element of this. And for me, thinking of that is like s- every this is something that needs to be on a regular basis in the sense because it does two things. One, if you have anybody new that's joined the team, you're not just testing the system, you're testing them against the systems and processes that you've put in place to say, hey, do you know how we do this? Do you know how we do this? They're getting a chance to do that in practice before it becomes reality. And then the other side of that too is even if you don't have new people in place, things change. And all of a sudden, and you don't realize that it's like, oh, that one feature we added, we didn't think it would have any kind of impact on all of this. But now, because that's in the code, all of a sudden it's had this huge impact across the board that, whenever we go to push the build process in a scaling situation, for whatever reason, just in that weird combination of things, that's where it breaks down. And I think that's the other piece of
Yeah,
it too.
this is a big part about processes as well. The same way you should have like free backups for your data, you should have backup processes in place. So some things will go wrong. Someone may not be available that day. Marketing or sales may want to change something on the site. You could run out of your products. You need to do some updates, change promotion. So things will happen. So obviously, spending some time mapping out, well, all of this, or at least as much as you can, is going to help a lot. And that's also when you come to reliability of your components, your providers, and all the people there. So if something goes wrong, who should I reach out to? What are the response time? What can I expect? And what is my backup plan if it doesn't work? So that's a big part of it. And it's always stressful because when you rely on independent partners, you need to make sure that they're actually up to par to the task. So that's why companies like ours reach out to our clients beforehand and try to prepare those things instead of like last minute realizing that we've missed something. But as a CTO of those companies, yeah, planning is the big thing.
I was gonna say, how much does this is feeling so markety right now, but it's an honest question that's coming out of my head. How much does vendor play into this of working with the vendor? Because really, some of the stuff I could be thinking in my head, like, oh, we're just doing it all on our side. How much should you be working with the vendor in the conversation as far as prepping for this?
Yeah, that ties back to the old buy versus build conversation. Nowadays, you can build a lot yourself, but you need to make sure you actually understand what you're getting into and everything you need to learn and master before actually rolling those things. And actually, Black Friday is usually one of the first big challenge that you're gonna come across. Your system has usually not been tested for this, and that's where you get the surprises. Obviously, not on the best day. Uh, that ties back to something else. So when you're doing all that testing, and I remember back in 2016, I was a CTO for a jewelry company doing most of his business online. And we had no way to actually have different environments to actually test what we were doing. So we had a staging environment, but the resources were low. And every time we wanted to increase that, well, we had to go through our managed hosting provider, increase the resources, get the bill, which was kind of insane. And then run our test, usually just for 1 hour, but we were paying for those resources for a long time. So that ties back to trying to now use platform, whether you're using providers like Upson or you're using solution like Kubernetes to actually automate all the new environment process. So you can obviously test new code, new release, new features, but also load testing. And that's the important part. You don't want to load test on your production environment. In 2016, I was indeed testing on my production environment at 4 a.m. So every first day I was waking up at 3 a.m., doing my new code release, doing the performance testing, do the user testing, manual testing, whatever that means, to be ready for 7 a.m. or 8 a.m. And that's not a good life. And I think every developer can relate to that. All those extra hours you put in at night because you don't want to have any impact on production are not good for you and for the company as a whole. So nowadays, we've got a lot more tooling that allows more flexibility and more testing in advance, and you should leverage those. Whether you build them or you buy them, depends. on your team structure and your goal for the next few years. But you need to have them right now.
Yeah, and I think you really need to design your whole setup for by thinking of the worst case scenarios. Like one of the learning of those cars things, the whole team and vendors, everything has been set up and we're running smoothly for every day, like day to day, when everything is quiet. Nothing was scaled. The team wasn't scaled. The vendors were not scaled. The DevOps system was not scaled for the worst case scenarios. And and I know that for a ticketing company as well, maybe again, most of the activity. So there is activities when you are buying stuff. So it's 24/7, and there is a peak of activity when people are scanning tickets, and this is happening at night when there is nobody in the office and there is no 24/7 DevOps team ready. So if you suddenly need to scale, well, your whole setup is not designed for that. So if you have specific vendors that allows you to scale, like with a push button or I don't know, and then you start from a couple of instances to, I don't know, a few hundred if you need, that will really make the difference.
What's interesting here, as you were saying that, something popped in my head. From a developer's perspective, you were talking about like you got to prep for the worst case scenario. Both of you guys were like, "Yeah, worst case scenario," and I'm like, from a business perspective, no, that's the best case. Like that's what they're hoping from. Like from like if we have any non-tech like the
Yeah.
business leaders here, they're going like, no, we want all the traffic, we want all these things, and I think that's sometimes from a ecosystem of your business needing to stop and think about that, of going like, okay, if we're running this huge campaign, if we are hoping to get this much sales and stuff like that, are you actually talking with your tech side to make sure that they're going to be able to actually handle that level of traffic that's going to hit the site on it? And just understanding that need, not only from just a technical but from a collaboration piece across the board, from even outside the tech sphere, of is marketing planning on running this thing, and it maybe from a historical deal, like, hey, every time marketing runs this campaign, all of a sudden we notice this much more happening here. Well, they ran it at this level this time and they said, well, let's double that. And it's like, okay, we need to have a conversation, because next thing you know, maybe you're doubling the traffic and they're getting a worse experience, so you don't get the desired outcome that you were hoping for from that.
No, and sometimes there are things you just can't expect. So taking back to that jewelry business, we got featured on the main French TV channel, just like out of the blue, no previous warning or anything. So everything crashed, obviously, because we were not ready for it. So this is also a lot of talking with your different teams about the different campaigns, what they expect, and always try to expect the unexpected. It's better be safe than sorry. So maybe you need to actually spend a bit more on your infrastructure and be ready for those things, because there is no worse feeling than your CEO coming and say, hey, we've missed, I don't know, 1 million in revenue because the site was down. Or I talked to that person that tried to buy like 20K of jewelry and couldn't actually finish a transaction. So that's really bad for the business and the image of the company as a whole. So sometimes, yeah, try to be over secure and actually invest a lot more that you should do in this.
I feel like it's one of those moments, like, to speak for the developer, it's like, we missed $1 million in sales because the site was down. We missed 1 million in sales because marketing didn't necessarily communicate that this was coming, so we weren't prepped for it. So it's like,
Yeah,
let's
well,
all share the responsibility in some of these situations
exactly.
too.
That's a situation where it's really easy to blame someone where you shouldn't, and just try to actually fix those processes, because in the
Exactly.
end, that's just about that. So
It's like,
Yeah,
we look
maybe
back to learn, we look
yeah.
forward to what we're going to do.
The learning may be that your revenue may be limited, but your ability to scale. Like if you don't have a big ability to scale, then you will lose revenue when this kind of event will happen. But if you can scale, yeah, and if
Okay.
there is some kind of automatic scaling, then yeah, you go.
Okay. Question for both of you. I we're let's just say limited people resources, limited time. This is what all developers dealing with, and you only have one thing that you can do to prep. Like, what are you going to do? Is it some kind of load testing? Is it practicing the scaling? What is the thing that you're looking to do if you only have one thing that you can do in prep for Black Friday?
It depends the time you have,
Okay.
because one thing can be huge. But I would say start focusing on caching. Caching can be amazing. Caching can remove a lot of bottlenecks in your application when it's done right. It can also have some side effects, so you need to make sure you are doing it right. And as a famous saying, there are two things hard in computers: caching and naming. So you need to spend some time actually doing this, like burning those resources for nothing when you're serving the same home page for all your visitors. It's just a waste of resources. And I'm not even talking about the carbon footprint there, but definitely for the performance side of things, it's not good. So caching will first increase the user experience, better loading times, smoother experience. There is that famous quote that dates back maybe 15 years ago now, but Amazon was losing 1 million in revenue every time they got 100 milliseconds more on the loading times. I have no idea if that's an urban legend, but the end goal is the same. You need the better user experience, and caching will also alleviate the risk of overloading your backend resources with a database or anything like this. So that would be my first thing.
Mine will be well, I'm biased because I'm an observability guy, but invest in observability. Give yourself the ability to witness your application, your infrastructure behaving, and try to learn from this. If you investing is not only monetary value, it's not only taking a subscription to something, but invest some time to know how to use it, to understand the information you can get out of all the data you are collecting, and it will guide you in the right direction. This is what I love about observability. It will tap you on the shoulder and say, look at this, look in this direction. And you have this process that keep being fetching all the resources, and you have this couple of very slow requests. Maybe you should invest in them, optimize your database structure, or change the logic behind so you don't have to do things in this way. So yeah, use observability. It will help you tremendously. And if you have time for a second thing, then once you've done this and optimization and cache and everything that you will learn from this, start with load testing to recreate the condition you will experience during those harsh time of Black Friday, Cyber Monday, or you are releasing a new feature, like your gaming company and you are releasing a game that has been long expected. The day you will announce this, you can expect an insane traffic. So be ready.
I've got one more thing on this.
All right.
So not really on the technical side of things, but especially like if you're working in an agency or if you're a developer directly in-house, you also need to fight some feature requests that might impact performance. I've seen that so much. At the beginning of e-commerce, like 15 years ago, well, 20 years ago, clients were asking basically a carbon copy of what they were doing in stores. So completely custom experience, so many promotion rules and stuff like this. And every time you add those features, actually, it uses more resources. It checks more things, like B2B pricing is the worst of all. But basically, all those things will impact the site. Fortunately, over the past few years, thanks to also some SaaS product like Shopify, but all those B2C e-commerce best practices have kind of been more defined, and people are more ready to follow them and not ask for custom code on there. But try to stick with what your solution is actually doing. If you're using Magento, don't try to over-engineer it and rework everything, because you're going to struggle with your dates, maybe security, but the performance is going to be so bad. So try to, with your clients, whether they're internal or external, try to rework those features in a way that's going to satisfy them, but also meet the performance expectation. And I think, Thomas, that's also something important. I've been using Blackfire a bit, and you've got the build feature to test those things, right?
Yeah, build feature is this what we call synthetic monitoring. So you have this ability to define your critical user journey, and we will test them. So we will make profile for each step of all those scenarios and assess the performance expectation for each of those. So good practice is to define expectation. So I want this maximum number of SQL queries. I want to go only one time in this very greedy function, and you describe everything you want. And what you have to push back is when somebody is adding a feature, such a request, and it's only a couple more SQL queries. Two SQL queries is absolutely nothing. Two SQL queries don't make a difference. It's true, but it's the same thing every other week. And when Black Friday comes, you have 200 more SQL queries, and you're in a bad situation.
Yeah, I know automated testing is always like really controversial. Some say that testing is cheating, but overall, if you have some time and you can implement like some really good automated tests, you can test like regression, obviously classic regression, like features not working, cosmetic regression, but performance regression is also super important. Not to make sure that some feature you deploy actually ruin something else because you had no idea it had any impact on this.
It's interesting. That just, I think hearing testing is cheating. It's like, really? That's like saying looking at your speedometer while driving is cheating. Like looking at to see if you have enough gas in your gas tank is cheating. Like, what? Like, it just doesn't, to me, hearing this, it's like what you said, Guillaume, of like pushing back on that, and then hearing what Tomas is saying about being able to have the observability. That's how you can push back, is you're able to say, like, hey, we tested this. And so, what this means is every page is going to load this much longer. And what we've experienced with a heavy load on this, that could lead to this resource usage. It just gives you that ability to communicate on those things rather than them just saying, those developers, they just don't want to work. They just don't want to do anything. They're just trying to, and it's like, no, we're avoiding the problems that we can see written on the wall if we do this way.
And as a tech leader, as a team leader, it's also your job to understand that all your developers are not at the same level on this. So having this layer of automated testing can prevent like stupid mistake. Not all developers are seniors and don't understand all the intricacies of like the infrastructure behind it and the strain they're putting on it. So having those tests actually helps a lot. But again, we're all pressured to actually release faster, always faster. So testing is sometimes, difficult.
And you would have to push back from those commits saying bug testing, fixing the test. I'm fixing the test because I'm simply improving. I'm raising the limits. I was expecting to do less than 50 SQL queries, and 52 will fix the test. You have to push back.
The best way to fix the test is to commend them.
I know, but something I experienced. Like, okay, we in another situation. Okay, we have this test performance and unit test and everything running every time you want to deploy. And if any of the tests are failing, it will prevent you from merging something or deploying a new version of your app. And sometimes you're stuck because you don't know, and there is an emergency, and you may want to actually do exactly that. So you comment all the tests, you can push something, and more often than not, you forgot to uncomment the test. You should have not fixed by tweaking it, but fix the reason why your test is failing.
And linked to what you're saying, actually, Stephanie raised a really good point in the chat where sometimes your marketing team will release something and just wipe out all the cache for the website during that day and just crash everything. So yeah, that's something you need to teach people the impact of what they're doing. And sometimes giving them a lot of access is not the right way to do it.
Perfect. Well,
blame developers for certain thing, taking trying to side with marketing a bit, but yeah.
Sure.
I was gonna say there's probably other departments. So we'll pick a department each live stream to pick on. I think this one was the marketing, just because I think marketing and Black Friday go hand in hand. With that being said, let's transition now, though, into you mentioned Stephanie talking in the chat, but let's see. We're going to transition now into our pull requests to see what questions and answers we might be able to give the audience out there. So, all right. So Celeste, our amazing producer on the back end, do we have any questions that you want to pop up on the screen for us to possibly ask or answer? I think I saw one in the chat from NLS at the very beginning.
Yeah. The question is, do you see this frenzy on JavaScript framework going on, or just a few frameworks emerging from the rest and stay there for long?
There we go. Hey,
And
so this is great. Do you see frenzy going on, or a few frameworks that will mature and stay there for a long
yeah.
time? What are your thoughts on this? What first? Let's just start off with this. What frameworks are your favorites to use with here, and then which ones do you think outside of that as the ecosystem might be the ones that just like stand up and prevail in the long term?
Our favorites or the one we're using?
Well, that's fine. Let's ride this for a little bit. So what's your favorite? What one you're using, and what's going to last a long time?
Favorite right now is Svelte and Svelte Kit. Amazing, so simple to use. But just because of the ecosystem, React and Next are just like so good right now. The number of components libraries. I wouldn't say it's mature yet. We've seen a lot of changes between Next 13, 14, 15, the change from page to app router, the different server components and stuff like this. But it's going that way. There are also frameworks that have been there forever and will still be there, like Angular, which we see a lot more in the enterprise market due to their actually enterprise offering and support. But yeah, those two, React, Angular, will stay. The support of Facebook behind React and Vercel behind Next actually helps a lot. So we'll still see a lot of new things emerging, and that's always interesting. A lot of ideas, and those ideas just usually get merged back into those main frameworks. There is also on the side of it a little competition right now, more on the runtimes, Node.js versus Band versus Turbo and all those things. So we'll see how that pan out. I would say right now that the big performance gain that you get is not worth the not yet so mature part of those things. Like if you want to release stuff and be stable and keep releasing it, stick to the basics for now at least. That doesn't mean you can't test them and experience on the side, but it's always good like to know that your production app is actually production ready.
Yeah, I've been here long enough to have seen many of those frameworks come and go, and I've been in teams where like people have strong opinion on this and invested literally months in switching from one framework to the other, even if I've never been sure that we use the first the framework intensely enough to suggest that we might need something else. So I'm always a bit cautious, but I think it will simply continue.
Right. That's a good point. That's something that was raised in the Reddit thread you were sharing about ChatGPT switching to Remix. Maybe one of the reasons they did it is just because the Remix developer was the loudest in the meeting room, and they just decided on going on it. So I'm sure it's not exactly that. There must be a lot of other things. But yeah, the shiny is not always better.
Yeah. What's your go-to, Thomas?
Well, I've used React for many years, and I simply don't want to change because I'm not using. Well, I'm more a backend guy. So from what I do is front end, like React is just great, and I don't want to invest more time. I like exploring stuff simply to know what could be cool. But if I have to build something, I would simply go to the most straightforward solution, and it's what I know. But indeed, if one day Facebook is stop supporting React and React just die, I will have to move. But till now, React is good.
I say I'm going to throw my hat in here on this one is as I'm learning more development because I have a weird development background in Journey in the sense of like I learned a lot between the years of 2000 and 2004 and then nothing until like last year getting back into it. So if you want to talk HTML and CSS back from that time of era and how to FTP stuff, I'm all there. I know all that stuff. But as I'm getting back into it, for me, I'm with you, Tomas. I wanted to learn Python a little bit, dive into it, and so for me, it was interesting. I tried Django for a little while, and then it felt too restrictive. So I've actually moved over to Flask now, and I'd say that's my main one that I play with as far as if I go into it. Other than, there's some other ones that people have pointed out to me, and I've tried them, but it seems like of all the ones that just intuitively made sense to me, Flask was the one that I just was like, oh, okay, that works.
Yeah, and I
And
would say, seeing you coding, Greg, actually going for some of the most popular alternative out there, like React, Flask, or Symfony for PHP and stuff like this, also helps you leverage a lot more the AI-based coding assistants like Copilot, Cursor, and stuff like this, because you can get so many resources. Obviously, you should always understand what you're doing and not just copy-pasting. But that's going to help you a lot actually start that journey and actually leverage all the code that is out there already.
yeah, it's interesting as you're growing and it's like learning. It's funny. You start out and it's like there's all this imposter stuff, but then as you get deeper into it, it's like, oh, everybody else is copying and pasting. It's just what you're copying and pasting from. So is it, is it Stack Overflow? Is it the app you wrote a while back that you're like, oh, I already did this once, and then you just go back and copy and paste it in there, or is it, a lot of what I'm doing, which is using some AI to
Well,
implement
the
it.
biggest satisfaction for a developer is actually looking for some stuff on Google and finding your own post from like 5 or 6 years ago, actually answering that question, and just copy pasting your own code, which is like, okay, sure, get it.
That's probably the best. Well, I'm hearing that we don't really have any more questions. So rather than just dragging this out, I just want to say I think that's going to be a wrap for today. For our first UpSun live stream. We hope all these tips has been helpful for everybody. And remember that the key is really in this is I think the thing I've heard of overall of this is just planning and preparation. Is literally the worst thing to do is nothing. Is to just kind of hope that it's all going to go well and then go on from there. But yeah.
Do not wait 1 year, do not, if one Black Friday went bad, do not wait 1 year hoping that everything will be better in 1 year.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, we all fixed it on that Saturday. We're good. It's not the best answer. Well, before we go, I just want to make sure to say thank you to everyone who's been here. Thank you, Guillaume, for showing up today. Thank you for Celeste and Pablo, who's behind the scenes on this. Thank you to everyone who showed up for this. We want to make sure to shout out upsun.com. Go give it a check. A lot of the things that we've talked about today, of course, are going to be innately built into UpSun, allowing you to do those things without necessarily having to build out all the processes on your own. But we were hoping to bring value outside of all that. Also, check out blackfire.io, powerful profiling tools and observability and the build processes, everything there. But with that being said, thanks for joining us for UpSun live stream. Stay safe, keep coding, and we'll hope to see you next time. Take care, everyone.
Bye all.
Bye.